1,000 better
1,000
stories.
better stories.
1,000 better stories.
1,000 better stories.
Welcome to 1,000 Better Stories, the Scottish Communities Climate Action Network's podcast, sharing stories of community-led climate action in Scotland to help us all imagine a better and fairer future beyond the new normal and transform what we think is possible. Hi, it's Kashka, one of your story weavers. Today we share an episode about overcoming challenges for community car clubs from a podcast by our friends at CoMoUK. CoMoUK stands for Collaborative Mobility UK, and it's a charity dedicated to the benefits of shared transport. Among many other things, they provide excellent support and resources for community groups wanting to set up car clubs or bike share schemes. Thanks CoMoUK for letting us share this story. This episode is a perfect follow-up to the story we published in February, produced by a member of our storytelling collective, Hazel, about the Porty Community Energy Project. It's a wonderfully creative look at the early days of setting up a car club, warts and all. Very much worth a listen. I would also like to recommend you head over to CoMoUK's podcast channel for more community stories on shared transport projects, and you can find the link to that in the show notes. I'll now hand over to Paul Bristow, who produced the story.
Hi, I'm Paul Bristow, and today I'm going to be hearing from people sharing the different ways they've made car clubs work in their community to hopefully provide inspiration and practical advice for folks who might be considering doing the same. In a moment, I'll let our guests introduce themselves and tell you a little more about their different car clubs. But first, let's hear a little about the work of CoMoUK.
Hello everyone, my name's Hannah Box and I am a Senior Development Officer with CoMoUK. In my role, I support communities who are setting up or operating car clubs and bike share schemes. This support may be through advising on feasibility, identifying funding opportunities, or signposting to other organizations and communities for further support. Car clubs play an important role in transitioning Scotland and the wider UK away from the private car. Our annual car club report that we published this year revealed that one car club vehicle could replace up to 20 private cars in the UK. This contributes significantly to emissions reduction in the face of the climate emergency. And with the cost of living crisis, many car club users revealed that they joined a car club in order to save money. Community car clubs are those that are set up by organizations and groups to address a need in their area, such as improving access to services for people without a car. Respondents to our community car club survey revealed that some common challenges in starting up and operating a car club included obtaining insurance, setting a pricing structure for the scheme, establishing financial sustainability, and increasing their membership through marketing and advertising. Today, 3 communities who operate car clubs have agreed to speak with us about how they've navigated some of these challenges and built upon the opportunities.
Hi there, thanks for having me. My name's Mike Callaghan. I am the project manager for the Local Energy Action Plan, LEAP, and we have a car club, obviously, which we've been running for about 10 years. We're based in Renfrewshire in Scotland, and we currently got cars in Lochwinnoch, which is a wee village, and Linwood, which is a bit bigger towards Paisley. So we've got 5 cars across both the places, and as I say, we've been on for 10 years. And we're still here, still plugging away.
My name is Andrew Capel, and I live in Mid Wales. And I suppose about 17 years ago, I first had the idea of setting up a car club in my local town of Llanidloes. And then probably 2 years later, it actually came to reality. And then we've been running now for 15 years. And about a year ago, we actually broadened and became part of Trip 2, which is it's like an umbrella name for a Mid Wales car club that at the moment encompasses Llanidloes, Machynlleth, Newtown, and Welshpool.
Yeah, good morning, Paul. I'm Malcolm McFarlane. I live in Kinross. I've lived with my wife and in Kinross. We've lived here 4 years. Through the time of the pandemic, I became a working from home person, having been travelling up and down the road to London every week and to the south of England. I had a car sitting on my drive, and I thought, it really isn't going anywhere. Do I really need to use it? Is the future working from home? It probably is. And maybe there's some other people in the same boat as me. So I decided at that time to have a think about a car share scheme, and started to research it. I roped in a pal of mine, Alan Thompson, who's been working with me on this ever since for the last 2 years. And we explored a number of options for car sharing, and then we got to the idea of a car club.
So there's typical challenges, I guess, for any car club in any community. The one that always comes up, the one that people always talk about. How have you dealt with insurance, for example? How was it challenging to make that happen and get it to work?
Yes. I mean, to begin with, we were able to get insurance. And even back, talking 15 years ago, it was a bit of a novelty, but we were able to get any driver insurance. And over the years, obviously, car clubs became much more prevalent, or community car clubs. But then the insurance industry got, I don't know, they must have had a few bad experiences of people, my guess, and I don't know for sure, but I from what talking to the insurance brokers, is that I think they must have had a few bad experiences where community car clubs were not run stringently or rigorously enough. People took advantage of them, thinking, we can do some underhand and some naughty stuff, as it were, using cars for the wrong reasons, and maybe something, and then they got caught out. So they kind of like pulled out of the market, and we were just down to at one stage our current provider, and then they pulled out of the market. But there was one more company who happened. It just seemed fortuitous. Whenever that's happened, there's always been somebody. I kind of feel like it's lucky in a way, but but we had to pay a price. We're paying something like £2,000 per car, and now having to have on top of that the expense of trackers and the monthly cost of that on top. So, they just treat us like a taxi service, which we're not. But they seem to think that they can get away with it because there's no competition.
We were fortunate in that when we set up, we were with a third party called MoveGreener, and we got insured through them, but it was quite expensive, and it wasn't very reactive in terms of what our needs were as an organisation. So in 2015, we managed to get insurance with Zurich as a car club, and we got in under the wire because not long after that, they stopped taking car clubs. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how many they've got on. I know the Moray car share up on the Moray coast and Finhorn, they were Zurich, but not long after Moray went on board, I think they may have stopped taking on new car clubs. So we're lucky in that we got in relatively easily with Zurich, and we've been with them for 7 years, and they've not told us to go away yet. So
we got to the point where we thought a car club is a really good idea. We started to get concerned about the insurance and the liability risks, etc. So at that point, we paused and decided to look at it in a different way. We went to a couple of commercial companies, so I can't remember all of the names, but the one that we settled on was Enterprise Car Club, the only really big commercial organisation running a car club that we thought could help us in this area, and we think we hit the sweet spot with them. We got in touch with their local, the regional manager, the sales manager for Scotland, who was really quite keen on the idea of, during the middle of the pandemic, I think Enterprise were looking to branch out and change their model slightly. Their car clubs were all city centre based, and they realised that people were going to be working from home, that they were going into rural areas, people were moving out of the cities, and that they really needed to think again about their car model. There was also there's the environmental impacts, and the Enterprise, one of the biggest car hire companies in the world, had to think about that. And so we hit the sweet spot, and we really got a good positive vibe from Enterprise, and sat down and decided that would be the way to go for us if we could make it work.
You, I suppose, solved some of those problems or tackled them in a different way because of this commercial partnership. Would that be right?
Yeah. So what the commercial partnership meant for us, it was really a three-way thing. But yeah, the insurance, the liability, and just the day-to-day running of a car club was beyond us, in terms of thinking how we would, how we'd be able to do that. So, but the idea with Enterprise was that for a pilot project for 12 months, they would bring a car into Kinross, and we would bring half the running costs to the party. And we'd also bring the support of the local council, which we needed for temporary parking restrictions, for a parking spot for the vehicle, etc., etc. So our part of the deal was to find some money, not a lot, about a third less than it would cost us to run a car club for a year, which was very attractive, and also find the support of the local council. So again, we hit a sweet spot there. We got good support from the council, and for a pilot for a year, they agreed to give us, if we could get prove local support for the initiative, to get us a space in a local car park in the centre of town to do that. So that was our start point. The money we got from CoMo and elsewhere, the agreement from Enterprise to start for a year, and then the support of the local council.
So things like that, like the insurance costs, and obviously in recent months the energy costs and all that kind of thing, that feeds in, I guess, to how you charge for things. How did you come up with your pricing structure? How have you made it work for you?
Well, generally we've always set it up just to be able to cover essentially the cost of the cars and the maintenance insurance. We want to be able to cover those costs over the course of the year. So that's really what's informing our. So we've got an hourly rate and a mileage rate, and generally they seem to be quite in line / maybe cheaper than your bigger car clubs. Obviously, we've had to put the mileage rate up a little bit as petrol prices have skyrocketed, unfortunately. But generally, we're just looking to cover our costs. So the hourly rate for our cars is currently £5.50, and we have 6p a mile for our electric cars and 20p a mile for our hybrid cars. So, I think it's reasonable. And has been cheaper. We've obviously had to put costs up recently, but I think it's still very reasonable, and the members still feel like they're getting a good deal.
Right at the beginning, when we had no idea what to charge, really, it was kind of like pick a number and start with it. I could do all the analysis, but we had no real data to work from because it was all just hypothetical. Even what other car clubs. The other rural car clubs, what they were doing it was very difficult. So we literally at the time we just said, okay, we're going to charge 40p a mile, keep it simple, let's not complicate it. And then within 3 months we realized that was far too much, and we dropped it, I think at the time, to about 30p a mile. And what we did, we decided once we got going, we were meeting as a committee, because we were just a unincorporated association then. We just reviewed the charge, the costs every quarter, and adjusted it accordingly. So by the time we started introducing an EV, which our first EV came in 2019, we actually that's when it was probably about that time when, or maybe even before that, when we actually had to move to a bit more sophisticated model where we started charging per mile and per hour, because insurance had gone up by then, and we decided to still, even with the EV, we charged the same price. just because otherwise, if you start charging different prices for different vehicles, it does kind of skew. People are obviously going to want to book the cheaper one if it's available. So we shifted then from just a simple mileage cost to hourly plus mileage, which also had the effect of making the availability of the cars more, because we realized people have been hanging on to them, I don't know, just a bit longer than they perhaps needed to. But when they were paying for hanging on to it, because even if it's just £1 an hour, the cars came back much quicker. And we suddenly realized, we perhaps we've got enough cars for longer than what we thought we might have.
I'm assuming, like everybody, that you've had a couple of bumps in the last few years with the situation, and now. But how is your sustainability? Has it worked okay, the rates you're setting, and how?
So it's worked okay. So we've always worked on the understanding that. So this is kind of this was a fundamental kind of setup by the previous project manager. He was always of the opinion, and I tend to agree with him, that our model is never going to be able to be fully sustainable, because it doesn't matter how well our cars are performing, we're never going to be able to. We can cover the cost of the cars and the maintenance of the cars, insurance, but we're never going to be able to cover all the staff costs on top of that. I mean, I think all this, but just the staff costs, whether it's just one person or whatever. So we've always operated a model of getting accessing funding to top that up. So, and that's just the way we've always worked with them. So far it's worked for us. Though there's always been funding options available, and hopefully that continues to be the case. So, because in terms of the cars are performing in terms of usage better than almost they ever have before for us. So it's hard for us to improve on what we're doing utilization wise, but still, then we wouldn't quite cover all the costs of the car club. Cover a large portion of them, but not quite all of them. So we just have to be able to meet that extra gap, and so far we've managed to do it. So,
well, to begin with, it was a conscious decision that this should be. I run my own business, and very much. I mean, very much sort of clued up with the idea of it needs to pay for itself. So from the beginning, one of the sort of assumptions I said to the group, the four of us that started it, was that it needs to be self-financing. And obviously to begin with, we go, okay, well, we haven't got, I say obviously, but to me it was obvious at the beginning, we had no car. We had no money particularly, no funding as such. We actually, as it turned out, we were loaned a car. And our biggest concern at the beginning was, what if we got a large bill? Because we had no money in the pot. You start with nothing, obviously, and we just decided, well, one of us would pay for it on the credit card, and the car club would then pay back in due course. So with that sort of sorted, we relaxed and got on with it. And in fact, we didn't have it. We were fortunate we didn't have any major bills in the first 6 months or so anyway. And by that time, we'd built up a pot, and we were basically, we realized from day one, we were then, because we had very low overheads, the insurance was probably about 300 quid at that time. Those were the days. And so we finally were able to, it was paying for itself pretty much from the second month onwards. And over time, in fact, we were lucky, but we actually got our next two cars were also loaned to us. I mean, they were old cars, but they were sound. But they were probably at the time only worth maybe 100 quid or so, if that. And the people, they were members of the car club, and they just said, well, we'd like to donate this to the car club, because otherwise I'm not going to get much for it. So it might as well be used. It's got more use in it. And so we, and by the time we came to our fourth vehicle, we actually had enough funds to buy it. And it was interesting because by about that time, it seemed more appropriate for us to start buying our own cars. And ever since then, we've actually bought or leased the cars ourselves.
So how do you promote it? Do you actively promote and market, or is it kind of a word of mouth thing, as it often is with these services?
We have done active promotion. We've done like kind of hitting Facebook and promoted Facebook ads, but we never felt the worth of that really. So we always found this word of mouth as being the biggest driving force really for us. And obviously things when you're over at Linstone, and they've obviously got their own communications to tenants with the newsletters and things like that, and that's obviously helped on that side of things. But when you're on a smaller village like Lochwinnoch, word of the mouth is obviously the kind of more driving force. And also people see the cars in the village, and they see them, they get used to that as part of the kind of architecture of the village, and they just they get used to the idea of it. And obviously we promote it in the kind of local newsletters and around. And but in terms of more obviously have flyers and that kind of thing, but generally it's just word of mouth's always been our biggest driver. We've had budget in the past and tried like targeted Facebook ads and that kind of thing, but we never felt we achieved that much through it. Obviously we may have raised awareness of what the car club is, and that may have helped, which is a bit more intangible. But in terms of getting members directly from that advertising, we were a little bit disappointed in how that. But again, it was an experiment. We've even done soft calling in the past, which was not my favorite thing ever, but we tried it. So we'd send out letters to people and knock on doors. And again, we didn't get very much from that either. So I think you just have to rely on word of mouth to a large degree. Certainly, again, we're a smaller organization and working in kind of smaller communities. So we can get away with that in a way that maybe larger organizations couldn't.
Yeah, well, there's a number of channels we've used. Fortunate, one of my friend Alan's friends is an ex-marketing director. There's a lot of fairly, I'd say, youngish retired folk around here in Kinross-shire, and he was one of them. He got on board, and we set out with a market plan. We're fortunate enough to have a farmers market here in Kinross, which is very well attended. A couple of thousand people every Saturday for 8 months of the year. 8 Saturdays during the year. So we've had a stall there. We've brought the car in there and shown people around it. We've been leafleting throughout the town, of course, on environmentally friendly paper that's been recycled, and we've put an advert in a local magazine, the Journal, that goes out every month. We've targeted people with email. There's a Facebook page, and at one point we got Twitter up and running and Instagram stuff. So we saturated the market early doors and got a good response from that. But yeah, that takes a bit of effort. There's 5 or 6 people around that, and a few people hours to get that done, but really worthwhile. Enterprise gave us an introductory offer, so we were able to hand out, say, right, here's a £20 voucher in effect. You get your first 20 quid of travel free if you sign up, and it was a free sign up in effect with that £20 voucher.
The problem, one of the challenges with car clubs is, and it's a good one, it actually teaches people, membership of a car club teaches people how to use a car less. And that's not, that's sort of part of the setup. And the reason for that is that people, when you have to obviously book the car, but you don't pay for it unless, you only pay for it when you've used it, or, you have to, if you don't use it, you don't pay for it in simple terms. So I know, and you see, you can work out, so I'm driving 100 miles, I'm doing 10 hours or whatever. So I know on the tariff I'm on, that's going to cost me 35 quid. Okay. So I know that. Whereas if it's your own car, you just jump in and go. You just think it's going to cost you the petrol, or if you've got an EV, it's going to cost you to charge it. And you think it's only that, but you've already paid for insurance or committed to insurance, maintenance and all that. You tend to, when we had a car, we just kind of like paid the bill when it came. We didn't, and but with a car club, you think, oh, it's going to cost me 30 quid. Oh, do I really need to do that journey? What else can I do while I'm doing this journey, for example? So what happens is that people, and that includes me, we get much more, what's the word? We look to ways to maximize the value of our journeys wherever possible. So maybe you might car share with somebody if they're going the same way. Or as you say, you think, oh, I've got other things I can do while I'm in Aberystwyth or on my way. So I would do them on that journey rather than, not thinking like that. So I have found over the years, and I've noticed that people start using the car club quite a bit to begin with. And then over time, you realize that they're learning to use it less. And then the quality of life isn't changing. They're not getting it. They're not giving up anything. So marketing is essential. So, and basically this year, I mean, I'm not. I know what to do with marketing. I just don't quite enjoy doing it. We need somebody who's people. Yeah, we have one member who does our Facebook, but we've also this year now that obviously lockdown has finished. There's been a lot more events, like summer shows, and so we are attending those. And there are so many of these shows that we in the locality, but we're trying to we've attended what we can, and as a way to raise awareness so that people know we're there, because it's not a kind of it's not a hard sell. It's not like somebody's going to sign up today. It's always been somebody who like when the time is right. It's been there's people signing up now who I've known for years who've talked about joining the car club, but now they're ready because their car's a bit older, it's not as reliable, and they're thinking, actually, you know what, I'll join the car club, use it for long distances and just use mine locally. As a couple of examples recently.
I know something that some organisations are starting to look at a wee bit more now is people's financial situation changes and everything else, as ways to make schemes a wee bit more financially inclusive or accessible to people. Is there ways that you've tried to do that or been able to do that?
A lot of our members don't have cars at all, and so we in Linwood we're partnered with Linstone Housing Association. So a lot of their tenant members are using the car, and they are subsidising the use of their tenant members. So they're paying a discounted price, so which is great for them. It makes it much more accessible, and they're getting access to electric cars and things that they may not otherwise get access to. So it's great for them. So a lot of them will be able to get rid of cars that will cost them a lot of money, and they're paying huge amounts less, and be able to just pop in a car whenever they need it.
The Welsh government had something called the Winter's Pressures Project, and we got some funding to support people through the winter. I mean, this was December last year, which would have been December 2021. And we've been able to support, it's been really good, for both, or both sides of the coin, in that people, we basically said that if somebody is taking somebody to hospital, for example, then the trip is covered. That's been really good. And we've worked with community groups who've used our electric car instead of their diesel minibus when they've only got, say, one person to take, and they're thinking they've only gone a few miles, they have to take this minibus. So they've been using our car for journeys like that. And also we've even got an electric van, and we've made that available to community groups. So the idea is that community groups have access to a van, especially for like food surplus, just moving, having to move stuff that you don't really want to put in a car or won't fit in a car. And it's been good because it's actually before that project, we as Llani Car Club originally, we were very much individuals. So we had individual members, whereas now we've got organisations who are members, and they're the members of that organisation obviously can drive the vehicles. So the whole project since suppose September last year has really expanded and become much more wider and reach more people, and especially in organisations, which I just think is marvellous, actually.
What would you do then, right? If I've come to you and I've said, I'm looking to try and set something up in my community, similar to yourselves, what are the best ways to go about it? What are the things I should watch out for the early stages of development when trying to make it work?
Well, I mean, I think obviously it depends on how far along, and if you're starting from scratch, I would say obviously you want to speak to CoMoUK, who will have some best practice advice for you, and give you the kind of landscape of what's available insurance-wise and etc. Because obviously I know they've done a lot of work on kind of insurance options and things like that. We've had a, as I said, there's a car club just started up the road from us in Kilburney, we're 8 miles away, and they've started from scratch. And I was speaking to them, trying to help them out, but they weren't able to go the routes that we went down because things like Zurich are closed off. So they've gone for the hire car model, which is the smart app, and they found that I think Como had mentioned it to them, and I kind of reiterated it. They did speak to Zurich, but Zurich weren't playing ball, and I think they had found the same for other insurers. So that would be one of the things I'd say. The other thing I'd say is just, again, making sure you're placing the vehicle in a place where you think it's going to get enough footfall and membership. Another big thing is when we moved to Linwood, our car to Linwood, we went there with a partnership with Linstone, so they were paying us a monthly fee for staff use, as well as so the staff use the cars, as also the kind of subsidy for the tenants, which meant we could move the car and we knew we'd get a guaranteed income from that car on a monthly basis. Which if you have an option like that available, I would highly recommend it. It means you're not starting from zero. You've already got a buffer in place, so everything you get on top is a bonus. So any kind of corporate partnerships or third sector partnerships you can get with, I'd recommend looking at as well, because that can complement normal usage as well.
Anybody setting out on this journey, I would say, get a local council on board. If you get a community council or whatever your local, political, well, they're not political, but the local, entities that are on board, get them on board. Get some people around you, and get a survey out there through the local magazine or paper or Facebook page or whatever you've got. Get some evidence of support. Get that together, and you will then you'll probably, without a doubt, I should imagine, because there's money around and there's will around, you'll get the support of the local council.
The simple thing is, it's not about the car. It's about the people. So you're going to car share, you're going to need to find others who want to do it with you. And that's the hardest bit, actually, in terms of you find, we started off with, I said about it 17 years ago, I came up with the idea. It took me 18 months to get to the point where I realized, with all my research and trying to work it out, what I needed was to find people to share it with. And when I found those three, well, I didn't find them. It was, my wife was asking around, and people came to us as well. We said, oh, yes, we want to do this. We want it. They want it for themselves. Yeah. So they actually helped me. And in 6 months, we were up and running. So 18 months, getting to the start point, and then 6 months making it happen. So that's what I say. You find a handful. 4 people is great to start with. If you just happy to start, then you can start over with a petrol car, because obviously it's easier. You've got to find somewhere to park it. You've also got to find somewhere to put the keys securely, and then decide how it's going to be, how you're going to sort of take care of the car, but all the other things like membership agreements, and people are quite welcome to download ours and use that as a basis. I would say with our membership agreement, it has not been tested in law, but it's an agreement that has evolved over the last 15 years basically. And then if you want an EV, then you're going to have to think a bit more about maybe having a few more members, or maybe getting some funding, because the upfront costs on that are much more of the car itself, but also having a dedicated charge point is a very useful thing.
we didn't have an electric vehicle, and that is a key thing for people thinking about this. If you can go electric, it certainly draws in the crowds a bit more. People will be much more interested if you've got an electric vehicle. They can understand the economic argument. We've got a hybrid vehicle at the moment because we couldn't get the electric charging infrastructure in place in time, and we wanted to do something. So we have a hybrid vehicle, and certainly a lot of the canvassing we've done at local market days, etc., people really want to be talking about electric vehicles, and that's where we're going next.
What about like thinking more broadly? Is there something that needs to happen, or that should have to sort of make that kind of quantum leap? What would make car clubs even more of a mainstream option? Do you think? What would do that?
It needs a cultural shift, really. Well, there needs to be a couple of things. I think there needs to be a big cultural shift in terms of, obviously, people have placed a value on the kind of car they have and that personal space they've got inside the car, and we kind of need to try and move away from that if we want to make car clubs and kind of that kind of transport more sustainable. And I think also you need to have a more robust public transport sector, a more reliable public transport sector, because if that's all working, and probably cheaper public transport centre alongside the public transport. So if you're operating a place where there isn't very good public transport, it's unlikely that the car club's going to work. If you've got very good robust public transport options that are affordable for folk, the car club probably slips into that as an option. So you kind of need a cultural shift in terms of how people think about driving and transport, but also how governments kind of move forward with public transport.
Electric is the key. People can see it and understand it. So the electric infrastructure is dismal, absolutely dismal. There's been talk for years about electrification, but across the country it is very poor. The money that's been promised has either not arrived or not been used to do the right things. So I think electric is the key for people getting into sharing vehicles, because they'll think that, well, I'm doing the right thing, I'm getting rid of my car, I'm sharing a vehicle, and it's electric. So that's a really big point, I think. So electric infrastructure, charging infrastructure, we need to get really clever about that, or get on with it, and we need to be really clever about it. There are charging points that you can have two nozzles on, so the local council could park its van. They're going to be doing it anyway. What we're seeing at the moment, anecdotally, is local councils having a depot where they have their depot full of electric cars that nobody's using, and they're sitting there all weekend because the people who do use them work Monday to Friday. We need to really think about sharing, really get the sharing model idea into people's heads. So that council vehicle, or that vehicle, which could be run by a third party easily, somebody like Enterprise, is sat in the middle of town. Now, it can be booked as a priority when needed by council officials, but it could also be used by private individuals and other organisations when it's not being used by the council or other bodies. So the second point is we really need to get our heads around the sharing model. Let's really do sharing properly. There's no point in just having a shed load of other vehicles on the road or sitting that are parked up. When I go past our car parking space, once or twice a day normally, and when it's empty, I get really, really excited because that means somebody's using it. So finally, the companies and car clubs need to get smart. People who are living 2 or 3 miles outside of Kinross, where our vehicle is, well, how do they get into it? So I think joining up multimodal hubs for transport. So you can take an electric bike to the bus station, you can get a bus there, you can also get a shared vehicle or a hire car there, you can get electric charging points. So creating smaller local hubs for multimodal and collaborative transport is probably the third pillar of that, is what we need to do. Just my ideas.
I think, well, a shift has already happened. I mean, or is happening, because if I wind back, 5 years ago, I would have said that even those people who call themselves green or environmentalists, of which you could probably count me as one, certainly, didn't see a car club or car share as a solution to climate change challenges. their idea, and understandably then, was that they would have to drive a more efficient car, especially in a rural area. You need a car, so they'd have an efficient car. Maybe they'd aspire to having an EV at some point, because back 5 years ago, the range wasn't really brilliant for a rural area. Whereas in the last couple of years, those people now understand that car clubs are, even just sharing, just resource sharing. I mean, this is a resource sharing. So nothing wrong with a car. It's, what you do with it. But the fact that if you can share cars, you're going to reduce the amount of cars on the road. So the cost of living crisis, the environmental crisis, if you like, that people have now, continue to wake up, have helped bring, and also, because the Welsh Government are quite keen to see car clubs throughout Wales as well. So there is the drive for it to happen, and I would say we're on the verge of becoming an overnight success.
Hats off, and a big thank you to Andrew, Mike and Malcolm for taking the time to speak with us and share their collective wisdom. And of course, if you'd like to know more about how CoMoUK can help you promote and develop shared transport in your community, then you can get in touch at info@como.org.uk or via the website and social media.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and maybe even a review. It will really help us reach a wider audience. If something exciting is happening in your own community, be sure to let us know so that we can help you tell your own story. Or maybe you would like to join our brand new Storyteller Collective. You can drop our Story Weavers a line at stories@scottishcommunitiescan.org.uk. To keep up to date, check out our website at scottishcommunities.org.uk or find us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram, or simply sign up to the newsletter.